Hi, welcome to the Silverstone Technology Cluster's Ask the Expert podcast. I'm Jeannie, your host. The mission of the STC is to support advanced engineering, electronics and software businesses, and we're always keen to share industry knowledge and insights. In each podcast episode, we sit down with seasoned professionals and industry leaders to uncover valuable knowledge, share real-world experiences, and explore smart strategies for navigating the challenges of modern business in advanced manufacturing. So today's episode is brought to you by TC Group, a leading firm of accountants and business advisors with offices in Northampton and Milton Keynes. Today, I'm thrilled to have Johanna Archer with us. Johanna is joining us from UK Export Finance. So thank you for being here today, Johanna.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Jeannie.
So let's start by getting to know you a little bit better. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what led you to your current role at UK Export Finance?
Yeah, well, I've been in a finance background. So I was a banking relationship manager, worked in invoice finance, did a bit of accountancy, business development. So I've dabbled quite a lot within the finance world and worked for some really big names. But I was kind of really attracted to the role of the export finance manager at UK Export Finance because it sounded like you could really make a difference and actually offer advice to people, get companies thinking about how they could export, how they might be, what the sorts of things that they should be thinking about when they go to export, and just finding solutions to make sure that all of the goods and services that we make here are being sold across the world where they rightly should be.
That's really impressive. So let's get straight into it today. Can you tell us what the busiest overseas destinations are for goods and services from the UK?
Well, you could probably imagine that the US and the EU still typically remain to be our largest export markets, but we are kind of like, since Brexit, I guess we're seeing people diversifying a little bit more into new markets where perhaps it's a little bit easier to trade. And it could be that they are where we've got free trade agreements. So a lot of companies now are looking at some, other markets like Vietnam, interestingly, Morocco, Asia, Africa, and obviously the Gulf states as well. So we do see some really interesting requests from companies, which is really quite interesting to see that they're actually diversifying, going to markets that they wouldn't normally go, which actually makes our input as a government department far more important as well, because we can help them navigate those markets more because they're not traditional markets for UK SMEs.
Okay, and when businesses are considering trading internationally, what are the main payment risks they have to think about?
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides to that. So you've got to think I guess the first thing would be, am I going to have sufficient working capital in order to take this contract on? And how is it going to impact on my normal trade? So that's one big thing, obviously, because if you're making something, adding to something, spending a lot of time producing something, and then it spends 60 days on the water or 90 days on the water or wherever it might be, there's going to be a long lead time between, you paying suppliers and getting paid the other end. So, you need to think about how that contract might impact on your, everyday working capital. So that's the first thing to think about. And obviously there's solutions for that, which, people can talk to us about. So as export finance managers, we've got access to a whole range of support, from banks to brokers to insurance companies to single invoice discounters. So there's a huge, vast array of people that we can connect these companies with, that might think that working capital is the thing that they need to be focusing on. And then the other thing would be, am I going to get paid? But of course, if it's a territory you're not used to dealing with, it's very much, am I actually, I'm really like to take this contract on. I don't really have a problem with the working capital side, but it's Africa. Am I going to get paid? So the other thing is, how do we look at that side of the risk? So, can we look at credit insurance? So the government has its own credit insurance product called an export insurance policy. So it acts as a single cover to cover that risk. So if it's just a question of worrying about getting paid and having that credit insurance, that comfort in place that you're going to get paid at the end of the day, then the credit insurance would be the way to go.
So you've just mentioned the credit insurance. What else can UK Export Finance do to support a company's growth potential?
Yeah, so in terms of how we support, so if the growth potential could be that the export contract is going to make a huge difference to their turnover, which is, quite a lot of the reason that we get involved in the first place is that, it might be a 2 million turnover company, but the contract's 2 million, and so this is quite a big deal for a company of turning over that level. So, there's one way that we could get involved there would be that, we could work with banking partners, we could work with other partners, finance partners, to find the right level of support. But what we do, so when we work with the banks, is that we offer guarantees behind these facilities. And of course, if it is something that's a significant growth against normal turnover, then that's typically where a bank would say, actually, we're really happy to, put a working capital solution in place for this, but we would like to get a government guarantee behind this so that we can de-risk a little bit. So we give up to 80% guarantees against these working capital facilities. And the other thing, obviously, when it comes to growth, there's a lot of support out there from the government that's really hard to understand and access. And it is, I've been doing this role now for 11 years and I still learn something new all the time about, who's got access to finance, who can help me with this, but obviously there's Innovate. We work very closely with Innovate UK. We work closely with the National Wealth Fund, British to Business Bank. So all of those other government departments that, sit within our remit to actually support SMEs on the ground. So there's lots of things that we can do in terms of our own guarantees and support when it comes to financing contracts, and then also giving people access to other ways that they can look to increase their turnover and impact overseas as well.
So you talked a little bit earlier about different destinations and how export markets are changing for current exporters. What can you do to help first-time exporters, people that have never explored this before?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem as though, I suppose, when we get approached to do anything, it's traditionally with companies that have got a track record of performing overseas. But actually, more and more now, we do see people diversifying into different markets, into international markets, stepping their toes into the water and sort of seeing what it's like. And so we do typically, as long as that company is an exporter, we can support them with our guarantees. So if we can work with the banks, it doesn't matter whether it's a first-time exporter, whether it's, somebody that's been doing it for a really long time. That's what we're there to do. If it's a first-time exporter, we can be there to help them with that one-off contract that they've got, or if they've got multiple opportunities overseas and different destinations as well, we can work with them to ensure that they've, got the right working capital in place to be able to go out to those markets. But yeah, that's probably in terms of the first time as well. I think that there's a great resource through the Department of Business and Trade, which is I don't like to call it a sister organisation, but I guess it really is a partner organisation, sister organisation. We sit kind of under the same umbrella in government. So, they have a great resource, which is the Export Academy platform. And so I think people need to sort of understand that that's there to support them, because if they are first-time exporters, it's a really great platform to go into. What do I need to think about in Mexico, or what do I need to think about here? And this platform is a great resource to go to, and that can be found. I think it's I can provide the information, but I think it's www.gov.uk exportacademy.co.uk or something like that, but it's on the Gov website anyway.
Okay. Well, you can share that and we can put it in the show notes afterwards if people want to access that. So you know that the STC is made up of a lot of SMEs and sort of smaller businesses. What's the smallest contract that UK Export Finance has backed?
When it comes to this is a really, I suppose that's quite a tricky one. In terms of credit insurance, so the product that is the work putting behind as a credit insurance policy, that's a government product, so there's no minimum or maximum, and the smallest one we've done is 25. I think it might be £10,000.
Okay.
So between the sort of 10 and 25,000, where they're a lot smaller. And then when it comes to working capital, where we're putting guarantees behind bank facilities, traditionally tends to be 200 minimum, 250, something like that. But then also, if we're signposting companies outside to look at other organisations to support them, it might be selective invoice discounting. That's just, a £50,000 invoice that's going overseas. So it's in terms of the suite of support that we've got available to us, I think those are probably the smallest.
Okay, so you've talked about how export finance is supporting businesses in exporting. How are you also helping exporters find more opportunities overseas and more export markets?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we're really focusing on at the moment, because we've only historically we didn't have an overseas network like the Department of Business and Trade. So the Department of Business and Trade has got lots of people based in embassies. It's got people all over the world that represent UK companies and UK businesses on the ground. But just, I suppose, about maybe 5 years ago, we started to recruit people internationally, and we have people now based in country. So I think we've got about 28 people based internationally at the moment that are looking for global opportunities for UK SMEs. And so a large part of that would be identifying projects that are happening overseas. So it might be that there's a road project or a rail project or something like that, where UK government becomes supports that with a government guarantee behind a lending facility that supports that project happening. But then if we do that, we demand then that project owner uses UK companies for the supply chain. So then we identify these big projects where we might be able to get involved, and then we say 40% of that has to be UK companies. So then we bring that back really and look at what our supply chain looks like. What have we got here? What's the UK supply chain into this? And invite people to bid for that kind of work within that supply chain. But it's quite good having the people based overseas, because if you know that you've got an opportunity, they ultimately can work hand in hand to sort of identify that opportunity and work to make that opportunity happen. When it's certain levels, it's not everything. I mean, you're kind of looking at some of the bigger sort of buyer side of things, but yeah, the overseas network helps us to deliver that much more efficiently, let's say.
Brilliant. That's excellent. Like that. So that's all from me. That's all the questions I had. Did you have any final thoughts that you wanted to share?
Well, we've joined the Silverstone Technology Cluster because we can see a lot of opportunity within the membership to, raise awareness of what we do. And that's probably our biggest thing, is that not a lot of people know about what we do, and it's just getting out there and saying, look, here's the support, use it. If don't be scared to go to those markets, use the support and that's available to you from the government. And we're here to give free advice. We're here to, my background is banking, so I've lots of experience of understanding what mechanisms might work. And I just think we saw an opportunity to join the cluster because there are great opportunities to raise awareness and develop business and network within the cluster. So I think for me, it's just highlighting that and hoping that, we want people to talk to us. We're here, we're approachable.
Brilliant. That's great. Well, thank you for joining me today, Johanna. It's been really, really interesting, and it's great to learn about what you're doing and how our members can get involved.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jeannie.
So that's it for today's episode of Ask the Expert. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you picked up some useful insights and inspiration along the way. If you enjoyed the conversation, please give us a like, a share, or a rating on the platform you're using. Please follow Silverstone Technology Cluster on LinkedIn and subscribe to the STC YouTube channel or our podcast on Spotify or Apple so you don't miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments or a particular topic or guest you'd love to hear from, drop me an email at jeannie@silverstonetechnologycluster.com. Thank you. Bye for now.